This is lesson 16D, Connecting the Dots. We live in a world that creates and uses a lot of data and information. This information is used in our society for different purposes, such as marketing and politics. Data visualization is the study of different ways to display data through visual representations, such as graphs. The purpose of data visualization is to use appropriate tools, such as graphs, to help people understand data. In this lesson, we will look at some complicated graphs that come to life with technology. We will also see how these graphs incorporate more variables than the graphs that we've already seen. Question 1, think about advertisements that you see throughout your day. For example, on a bus, the highway. What catches your eye? What draws your interest? List one example of a graphical display of data in a commercial or an advertisement. In today's lesson, we're going to understand that visualizing data in different types of graphical displays provides tools that can help people understand patterns. We have used this word a lot this semester, trends and patterns. Data can help identify and or understand historical events and how the world has changed over time. We're going to be able to identify different variables in a graph with several variables and analyze motion bubble charts to identify, here it is, trends and patterns. In Preview 16D, you were introduced to some interactive graphs from the Gapminder website. These graphs are dynamic and they show how variables change over time. Many of the graphs are bubble charts, which use bubbles to represent information. The area of each bubble corresponds to data from a new variable. These dynamic bubble charts can present information using more than two variables, conveying much more information than the other charts and the graphs we have used so far. Note that some of the graphs include data from over 200 years ago. And you may wonder, how in the world were all of those pieces of data collected? Well, for the most part, no such data exists. Instead, these data were estimated or determined using statistical models. Life expectancy data, for example, were modeled using some basic assumptions. One assumption is that most countries in the 1800s had very low levels of life expectancy, typically between 25 and 40 years. The other assumption is that once a country goes through a period of gains in health, then the life expectancy should improve. These models were determined by studying historical and demographic accounts. Gapminder emphasizes that the historical data are very rough estimates. So now you and I, we're going to go back in time to 1800. Think about, for a minute, about what the world was like then so that you'll have a context for the information that we are about to see. What I need you all to do is to hit pause, go ahead and answer some thoughts on question 2, and then unhit pause and then come back and we'll talk through some of this together. So the economy, what was it mainly based on at the time? Well, if we're back in the 1800s, even though the Industrial Revolution had begun, at least in some parts of the world, the economy was still largely focused on farming and agriculture. Many people lived on farms or in rural areas, not in cities. The total value of goods and services produced by any one country would be relatively small because mechanization and industrialization were not yet widespread. So this tells us that the income levels could be really low as compared to today. Part B, so what about health and medical care at that time, and how does that relate to life expectancy? Well, something you might have written down is that medical care was very, very, very different 200 years ago, both in terms of availability and in quality. If someone got sick or injured or wounded in war, they very likely were just going to die, which lowered the average life expectancy. We are about to play this Gapminder data, and they're going to ask us to do different things. Like we start by sliding back to 1800 and then watch the graph from there. But before we watch it, I'd like to look at the questions, some of the questions they're going to ask us. Part A, what can you say about the countries in the world at that time, back here at 1800? What was the richest country? How does this picture compare to the picture in 2012? We're going to play it, watch it go into motion. What kind of patterns do you see? And you're going to have to watch fast and probably hit pause and replay. And I would look at it a couple of times and focus on different parts of the graph each time you hit play. It mentions we need to zoom in. How have the historical events, wow, this is really a cool lesson, over the past 200 years impacted life expectancy or the economy in certain countries, and use the graph to justify your conclusions. So I'm going to run the Gapminder video, the timeline, and then please hit stop, replay, go back and forth, look at this several times. But one of the main things it's asking us here is the richest country in 1800. What does this picture that we're looking at then look like in 2012? Watch for patterns when we hit play, and then think about historical events. You can think about, I think especially worldwide events, because that can impact the graph as a whole. So hopefully you've already taken time to analyze what's going on through your preview or hitting pause right now to notice certain parts of this graph, like the vertical axis is life expectancy in years, income is US dollars. And then over here, the world regions, green being North and South America, Africa, Europe and Russia, Asia and Australia. And even as I touch these, they start flashing. That's pretty funny. I haven't noticed that. Well, that's really cool. And then the size of the data, like right here, when I hover over it, that's the United States. That's the population size based on the size. And then China is much larger. And you also will automatically see where it is saying 76.9 is the life expectancy, and then income 16,000. When you go over here to the United States, 79.1 is life expectancy with an average income of 54.9 thousand. And then you have some other countries over here, Central African Republic, their average age of life expectancy is 51, and their average income is $689. So one thing it asked us to do is to look at where all the dots are for 2018. Again, you can go back and forth, look at this multiple times, but let's answer our questions because it asks us to look at 1800. And even as I drag everything down, you got to watch the dots, you got to watch the numbers in the background, but let's get us back here to 1800. And wow, look at where we are here. Let's see if I can even find the United States. There's Mexico. Is that us? There we are. Average age of life expectancy back in 1800 was 39, and the income was $2,000. And then you have others like China's life expectancy is 32, and then right here, Solomon Islands, 25 was your life expectancy. So it asks us several things. What was the economy based? Oh, it's not that one. What can you say about the countries in that time? And you can say something like that it was low life expectancy, low income. And again, it was based on income, agricultural income, or just agriculture, maybe not so many, not money exchanging hands, but goods exchanging hands. They want to know who or which country is the wealthiest country. Well, I'm getting the Netherlands, United Kingdom. Looks to me like it's Netherlands is the wealthiest. I can hover on it again. There it is. The Netherlands, that's the wealthiest country. How does this picture compare to the picture in 2012? And you can write all sorts of things. You can write where we are on this graph, that we're down here with a life expectancy, low income. You can see that we're all kind of bunched up together, but when we zoomed over here to 2018, wow, we are spread out all the way from here, which is the Central African Republic, all the way up to here, which is Luxembourg, and they're the making the most or the wealthiest average income. That's part A. Part B says, click play, watch it go into motion. What patterns do you see? Information. And so let's go ahead and go back to 1800. And then I want you to also think about part C, the historical events. Think about world wars. famines, all sorts of events that affect us, impact us as a world. So here we go. And I just think this is the coolest thing, hitting play and watch the dots. So you might want to go back and watch what happens at World War I and World War II, how we have some major drops and we back around and different things happen. You need to write down some thoughts. There are so many things that you could write down. We are all eventually going up and to the right. We are increasing in population. We are increasing in income. And then we have to ask questions like, is the income adjusted for inflation? Lots of other questions that we can ask. Put some thoughts on part B, put some thoughts on part C. And then you really might want to go back and look at what was going on at the Civil War, World War I, a Spanish flu, or World War II, and looking at the life expectancy, how so sadly it just drops down to very low numbers on life expectancy. You can look at other things like when the Industrial Revolution was going on, about the incomes and life expectancy. Then you can look at the Depression, the Great Depression, the rise of communism in China, the effects of HIV, about life expectancy, how it declined, especially in some parts of Africa, the fall of the Soviet Union, life expectancy and the health of some countries increased, while in other countries it decreased. So we're now going to look at this a little bit more specific. And on question 4, we're going to click what's called a trails box, or we're going to click some specific countries. Let me see if I can do this without having to hit pause. Like over here on the side, they're asking us to select Germany, Italy, Russia, and United Kingdom. So let's see if I can find these. Germany, Italy, Russia, Italy, um, Russia, United Kingdom, and the United States. Russia. And they should be being highlighted as I click them on our graph. Oh, there we go. United Kingdom and United States. So we have clicked those, and then we're going to slide it back. We're focused on those 5 countries, and then they're asking me to stop it just before 1910. So I got it at 11, and notice the trails box is clicked, so you're getting to see their paths and when they've dropped and where they dropped. And so now at 1911, we're going to click play, and I'm going to try to stop it at 1920, and this is the World War I. And did you see everybody bottom out? It asks us to play and then stop and see what we notice, and then it tells us um, different things like noticing Russia, how it's behind, and it looks like a big old jumbled mess, but you see how Russia's still lagging behind over here. You can look at Germany and Italy and the atrocities going over in their countries. Even the life expectancy of the United Kingdom dropped. So many different things going on. So many things that you could write about of how life expectancies dropped, like even in half. And then all of us seeing decrease in this time frame. They're asking us to click play again on part B and stop at 33, and then they want us to look at what's happening to Russia's data over this time. Wow. And so what's happening with Russia is their life expectancy decreased drastically. And it was the time when Joseph Stalin led Russia, and he started the first of the 5-year plans, and then he began the Great Terror, which was a massive purge of the people in the country. So now moving on to part C, it says deselect all that we have. Let's see if I can do it through here, except United States and Japan. Come on. And so let me go over here and catch Japan. Got them. So looking at Japan and the United States, in part C, it says deselect all and then select these two and set the year at 1935. I'm really close. And it says click play, what do you observe? And World War II is about to, and then notice what happens to Japan right there. Notice how Japan goes way backwards and then starts growing again after the dropping of the atomic bomb right there. And now watch how it's steadily growing. It's gaining on the United States, and let's keep watching. They didn't say how long to keep watching, so we'll keep watching. It's almost like a race. It is a race. And then it stops right there. So lots of history. They ask us to say, what do we observe? And then we can talk about Japan and the income levels. You could talk about United States and growing steadily. And then how they are actually higher than the United States as far as life expectancy in Japan. Question 5, think back to when you've seen this graph in the preview, and in general, if a country gets richer, will it see better life expectancy? And this is where you need to write down some thoughts, ideas, and opinions. And one thought is, not necessarily, because wealth and health really are correlated, but there are some countries that are on the average very wealthy, but they have poor life expectancy. For example, Botswana is a fairly wealthy country, but it has a fairly poor life expectancy. And then you may have extremely wealthy people in the country pulling the average up. And it's not that the wealth is distributed well, it's that it's disproportionately represented by just small groups. And it still could be that the country's overall life expectancy is not great. And they finished this lesson with one sentence. If you're interested in learning how to construct these types of graphs, you can go investigate at Google's Public Data Explorer, because this is just a really cool graph, really cool information, worth sharing in your history class or English class. I really like this graph. But the lesson's over. We are done with 16D. You need to look at your syllabus to see if you can keep going or should keep going, or if you need to pause and take a little break.